Welcome to Western Wisconsin Journal. I'm Bobby Pominville, and I'm your reporter on the arts. And today I've invited a friend back to the show. We've been catching up lately on what she's been doing. She's an author, a speaker, and an artist. And I just really want to get caught up with her again and find out what she's doing. And my friend is Evelyn Klein. So welcome to the show.
Well, thank you. I'm happy to be here.
It's nice to have you back, and you've been doing so many different things. And I have been able to see you off and on through the years, so I know you're busy. So you and I taught at the middle school at one point.
Right.
And elementaries.
And the elementaries.
And I just wondered, we've got some of your books on display and some of your artwork, but let's start with your books. What actually led you to write the first book?
Well, I had been writing a long time before I wrote the first book, and so I actually started out writing for my students, and then later on I wrote poetry, and I just wrote it for myself. And then I decided, well, it's time to put together a collection, and it really became a theme book about where I was going with a new life. And so then that became From Here Across the Bridge.
And that's this book right here.
It's this one.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Right here. Yeah, that was my very
You
first
have to help
book.
me with the order because
Yeah.
I'm not familiar with all of it.
Yeah, and this is, and it takes place partly in Hudson,
Oh,
partly
that's
in
right.
St. Paul, and then it moves to Milwaukee and back. So, and it's about family, and it's about life's changes, and in how we change with it, and the person we become, or the person we rediscover in ourselves, because so much in life demands our attention that we forget who we really are and what we need for ourselves. And so that book helped me get back on the kind of onto a center. And so, and then when that was finished and I showed it to my dad, he offered me some artwork to put into it. And so I was so delighted because he was such an accomplished artist that he would offer. And so I chose the artwork according to what I thought illustrated the mood of the book. And so a lot of some of the scene, like the cover bridge is a bridge in Wisconsin, one of the last covered bridges in Wisconsin. And you may have seen it on some travel
I
brochures.
do remember that.
But I know he did it, you know, in real life. He went out there and he traveled a lot, and so, and then there are a couple of others that were done in Milwaukee. But he traveled all over the states, and so some of them are from different areas. But so that's how I got into getting illustrations into my book.
You know, that's a beautiful piece of art there, and it's done by your dad.
It's a woodcut.
Your father did it, a
Yes,
woodcut.
yes,
How special
yes.
to have his illustrations.
Yes.
And are they all woodcuts, or are they different media?
He was specializing in woodcut art. He was a graphic artist.
So when you grew up, you saw your dad doing
Yes.
artwork.
Yes, I was always surrounded by art. I lived and breathed it. And so I couldn't ever imagine being without art.
Oh, that's so special.
So, yes.
And then for you to be writing, composing books, and then to be able to use your dad's drawings and woodcuts are so special.
Right, it is. And so I'm also working on a book of poetry where I write poems for his different woodcuts, but that's,
Oh,
you know,
my.
a work in progress. And
So you got a collection of his work, and
Yes.
you're actually adapting your writing to it.
right.
Is that going to be your next book someday?
Well, it won't be the very next book, but it will be one of my next books, shall we say. I have a number in the hopper, you might say.
Yeah.
And so, and that's one of them.
And so when you're talking about that now, is it Is it difficult to be inspired like on a daily basis to go and write something, or does it just come to you all of a sudden? Or?
Right. It's kind of something that's kind of intrinsic, and so it's not a matter of do I have ideas, but do I have the time to do all the ideas that come to me. And so I spend my mornings writing.
Oh, yeah.
And if I don't go places in the morning, when people hear that, well, you work from home, well, you can come anytime, but I can't because
That's
in the
your
morning
time to
I
write.
have to write. And if I don't, I feel like I'm off center. So,
Oh, that's
so it
really
is-
become a part of you then.
yes, yes.
Well, how lovely.
And
That's
then, you know,
special.
when my dad passed away, when my second book was finished, my dad had passed away. And I thought, now what am I going to do? And I thought, well, what if I go out and just see what I can do on my own? Because I had taken lessons from my dad, and I had done fashion drawings, you know, and I was into art, but from a different perspective. I was doing decorating and fashions and that sort of thing. And so I wound up going to different locations, and as you can see on the book cover,
Yes.
it's a montage of Twin Cities skylines.
Oh, yes, there are
Minneapolis
familiar
and St.
things on
Paul.
there.
And I enjoyed it, and when I showed it to the publisher, she liked it. And the only thing, the first cover I did was all in graphite, because I know publishers prefer black and white because it's easier to publish.
Yes.
But she said, well, the cover we'd like in color. And I said, well, give me a week or two and I can turn it into color.
Oh, that's so
And
neat.
then I did the same thing over in color. And so I started, and after I had done the art for the book, I was kind of hooked.
Oh, yeah.
And so art has been with me, my own art, creating my own art has been with me ever since. I think when we have someone in the family we rely on, we get kind of lazy and we think, oh, he can do it, he's so good at it, you know.
Yes, of
And we
course.
don't give ourselves enough credit that we perhaps can also do it.
Yeah.
And so then when I did my third book, well, there was no question in my mind. And so, and I do like to go on location when I do the drawings because I think it gives more immediacy to the picture, at least for me.
Yes, yes. Now, just can we back up just a little bit? For your first book, From Here Across the Bridge, you said you took locations from Hudson.
Well, it's a memoir. The book is a memoir, even though it's written in verse. And so some of it takes place in Hudson, some of it takes place in St. Paul, and it moves to Milwaukee. It even goes overseas.
Really?
So yes, and in one of the poems. And so it's kind of like a search for identity. And of course, Milwaukee is where my family is, and was my parents lived
I
there.
see.
And I still have a brother who lives there.
Yes.
So, and I go to Milwaukee at least once a year to be in touch with my old hometown.
Oh, that's very nice.
So, yeah.
Very good. So it's kind of like everywhere you've lived or nearby neighborhoods where you've been.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
And they show up, you know, or sometimes I invent places. But in most of my poetry, that's about real places, real people,
Yes.
and real experiences.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, I just found that so interesting. Now, is this a book that I'm a little bit familiar with?
You might be.
Because I know you've gifted me some books, and there's one I really enjoyed that was rather patriotic.
Yes, that was in Seasons of Desire. That
Oh,
was
that's
the,
Seasons of Desire.
Right.
Yes. Yes.
Right.
And you and I actually had a little collaboration on that.
Yes, and that was wonderful.
Wasn't that fun?
That was wonderful.
At the Loft.
Yes, where you sang the song parts of the poem, and we
you had a wonderful
phased in and
idea
out.
to read, and you would read, and then I would sing a little bit of a song.
Yes.
That would really work well with the reading.
Yes, yes. And
And I think it was very well received.
I think so too, and I think it
Yes.
added a lot of spirituality to it, and
Yes. Oh, it was
very,
wonderful. And when I think about things like the patriotic holidays, and like you said, even 9/11, it's perfect for that.
well, the Seasons of Desire is about holidays and seasons of the year, but also seasons of life, and it encourages people to keep growing through life. You know, as adults, we go through stages just like children do, and sometimes it's hard to go through the stages.
Yes.
And if we can hang on to our dreams or retrieve them and develop some of those, that can give a lot of new energy to our existence and to our days.
Well, and like you were in a transition. You were an educator, a teacher for many years, and then you probably got to the point where you were writing more than thinking about teaching.
Not really. I think teaching and writing are very compatible.
Oh, yes.
And so a lot of my feelings about teaching wound up in poems. And a lot of the things that we did inspired me to write.
Mm-hmm.
And some of these poems, you know, did find their way into the books. Too, and I do have a whole collection of school poems which are not yet published.
Really?
That, you know, because I'm thinking I was going to put it in with a book on education, but I don't know. Maybe they could be in some other poetry book. But as you can see, I'm always trying to figure out ways to incorporate my poetry.
This is great because you have so many ideas.
Yes.
And you've kind of got things on the back burner. Oh, I'll
Yes.
get to that someday, or you
Right.
know, and then
Right.
you're sort of gathering things that you might be putting in new books or other books.
Right. And what happens is, just recently, I wrote a poem for, well, you probably know the teacher, Ethel Johnson.
I do.
And she is
Yes.
really up there in years
Oh,
and a very
yes.
active person. And she and I worked together for a time.
Yes.
And I think she's in her 90s now. And one of her
yes, she must
birthdays,
be.
I dedicated a poem to her. And
Oh.
so I'm having these poems about people I've known in education, you know, memories, many memories that I treasure. And someday they will perhaps form their own book. So
Oh, how lovely.
I can see it coming together, or at least there'll be a section of a book, you know, all by
Well,
themselves.
She is someone who I've admired many, many years. And I do think she's had such an impact on what she did in Hudson. And for
Yes.
those that don't know, I believe she specialized in reading.
Yes, yes.
Yes. And she must have taught many, many students.
Yes, yes, and she's now still active with the Wisconsin Retired Educators. So you have to just look up to someone like that as a wonderful
I do.
model.
I just admire her so very, very much.
And so I felt inspired to write her a poem, and it's kind of lengthy, and it's a little bit about the history of teaching too.
Oh.
And it just came together, you know, we had some conversations about how it used to be before I
yes.
came onto the scene and
Oh,
teaching.
yes, just think of the years
Yes.
of knowledge she has.
Right, and so I thought this would just makes a lovely story.
So
But-
is that ever going to be published?
Well, I hope so.
I hope so too.
Right.
Yeah,
So,
that would be great. That could go in your book on stories about teaching and so on.
yes.
Yes.
Exactly.
Oh, that's just
So-
really interesting to me. So, are you writing now? And do you have a new book going? Or what are you doing right now as far as your writing?
As far as my writing goes, I've just finished a book of short stories. So this is quite a change for me. But, you know, these are situational stories about relationships, mostly between men and women, but it's not a harlequin kind of thing. It is just kind of taking a look at, you know, what motivates people, how do people interact, why do things work out or don't work out, how does our present way, our new way of living, you know, for those of us who've been around for a few years, we've seen a lot of changes, and how do we deal with these changes? And so this is the dynamic that I want to explore in this book, which the working title is Affinities. And so it will have illustrations. I have quite a number. I have about 12 stories and 2 poems in there. Can't get away from poems altogether. As a matter of fact, one of the poems in there will be a poem that won a first place with the Minnesota Young Association.
Oh,
and it's entitled Destiny.
Oh,
And
very
so,
good.
So that will be one of the poems in there. And so I'm excited about the book because I think it can have relevance to a lot of us who've seen so many changes and are trying to adjust our personal lives. You know, with women having more opportunity for a career and doing what they want to do, things aren't so cut and dried as they used to be. You know,
that's true.
We have some choices now.
Yes.
And I think that's what I'm trying to show in the book, that how this affects our interaction and our self-confidence, if you will.
Oh, that
As
sounds
to-
wonderful. That would be a great book. And I could see, now you end up with quite a few speaking engagements, don't you?
Yes, I like to keep that on a regular basis, partly because I enjoy it. It's a way to interact with people who enjoy reading and who like to read my stuff. And so I'm going to be speaking to the Twin Cities Coalition of Grief Groups at the House of Hope Church.
My, really?
Coming up this month on the 18th at 5:30 at House of Hope. And I will talk about how to deal with grief in terms of using creativity like art and writing to work through the stages of grieving and healing. And
Very important.
yeah. And so, and then in March, I've been invited to St. Cloud to speak to the Granite City Book Club, who are reading my books. So,
Really? Oh,
and
neat.
so I'm looking forward to that. Yeah.
Wow, this has really become a wonderful area for you.
It has.
And you've expanded in so many ways.
Yes, I think the artwork has really helped me expand in ways that I never imagined, you know. And it's kind of strange, and maybe it isn't strange, but when I was a kid living at home, and even when my parents were still around, there was artwork everywhere. My dad was always working on something, and of course, if you know artists, they may have a studio, but then there are lots of walls in the house, and so my dad would have not only finished pictures up, but then if he was working on a new picture, he'd have sketches all over.
Really?
And so when he passed away, and both of my parents passed away, it was like this world was no longer around. And when I started to do artwork, it suddenly miraculously reappeared. So when you now come to my house, it looks
that's great.
like I was used to, with artwork.
Yes.
And the other day, I turned my dining room table into a workshop because I was getting ready for an exhibit at the R.H. Stafford Library in Woodbury.
Okay.
And so I was doing a little framing and putting on the wires
Oh, yes.
and getting everything ready. And so these were hung yesterday. And
So they're at the library now?
Yeah, they will be at the library in Woodbury
Oh.
for the month of February and March.
Oh, wonderful.
And actually, the pictures that will be in there will be the pictures from Seasons of Desire, because I have 5 drawings in there, and they will be at the library in their original size.
Oh, wow.
And then also this picture.
Yes, and I think it's time to move these a little.
All right.
Because let's talk about your artwork now, because you've really gone into that. And we're kind of focusing on this one right now.
Yes.
So tell us about this one.
This one is also in the Woodbury Library.
Okay.
And actually, the one that's in the library is a limited edition fine art print. And this is the original. And the print looks exactly like the original. So in this picture I was invited by Groveland Gallery in Minneapolis last year to do an artist's love letter. And so I thought long and hard, what is an artist's love letter? And so this location is actually up on Berkmoos Park, looking down
Oh, really?
at the St. Croix River.
Yes.
And originally, this was a bench where I worked on one of the pictures for Seasons of Desire.
Oh, yes.
And one day as I returned to claim my bench, what did I find? There was a couple sitting there, and he had a guitar, and they were visiting. It was so romantic. It just stuck in my mind.
Oh, so that's what you've
And
drawn.
so obviously I didn't do the drawing while they were there, but I had this area in mind. And I went back to the bench, and then I decided to do a little role changing. And I gave her the guitar.
Uh-huh. That's
And-
artist license, I
Yes,
think.
yes. That's my, why can't the woman be the one singing to the man too?
Well, it could be. Yes.
And so I have them sitting there, and then I wrote a little love song for them, my beloved. Let's travel the river of love. Let's travel with a song, our song, forever yours.
Oh, and you put that on hot air balloon type thing.
Yes.
Oh, I
and,
like
you
that.
know, in the summer they're out there in full numbers.
That's true. We see them a lot in this
And
town.
so I thought that would be kind of a fun way to
That's very clever.
include.
I really like that because you've just worked it into the artwork.
Right.
And it's so interesting. You want to look at that and see, well, what does that say? So
Yes.
it fits perfectly.
I wanted to have a non-intrusive way to get the words in there, and I thought balloons might be one way to do it.
Wow, this is perfect for
And so-
February. So actually, I didn't know you were going to bring this picture, but this is really perfect because we're almost to Valentine's
Yes.
Day.
So,
That's already on exhibit in Woodbury.
yeah, and they have a whole wall of Valentine's artwork from the Woodbury. The artists of Woodbury are the group that are
Wonderful.
having the exhibit there, and so then there are other
Okay.
people's artwork
I
for
think
Valentine's
that's wonderful
Day.
for our audience because they could possibly go to the library and
Yes,
visit
it's
and
not
see
too far
things.
from Hudson. It's
Oh
about
no, it's not
15
far at all.
minutes.
It's so
So-
close. I know a
Yes.
lot of us go over there for various things,
Yes.
and restaurants and shopping and all kinds of things. So
And it's a lovely library.
Oh, it
too,
is.
because they
I bet it
have
is. I've
this
never
park.
been to that one.
Oh, you're missing a wonderful place because it's called Central Park.
Oh.
The building
Yeah.
where it's housed,
Yeah.
because they have kind of an indoor park
Oh.
with live trees and
my.
big glassed-in areas.
That's great.
And they even have a play area for children where they can climb around on trees and shrubs and that sort of thing.
And
So-
I am one of the proponents of libraries.
Yes.
I support the Hudson Library and all libraries, and I really feel it's a sad, sad case when they're closing and not supported.
Yes, yes,
That's a
I think
problem.
that is very, very sad.
Well, that is gorgeous. Now, let's put up the next one. I have to be careful here because I don't want anything to go crash. You know what I mean?
Well, you could just put it down on the,
I guess I'll have to put it.
there you go.
All right, we've had another one down here. This is really a lovely, lovely frame and everything. I like the way you've done. Oops, is that okay?
Yes.
All right, so tell us about this one.
Well, actually, that is the bench.
That's the bench.
That's the bench.
Oh, I recognize it.
And so this was, I wanted some spiritual themes for Seasons of Desire, the book Seasons of Desire. And I thought, what a spiritual place up there at Berkmoos Park with the mounds.
Oh, yes.
And the view on the river and
It
the
is.
beautiful trees and you get the view of the bridge and the river. And it's so quiet up there and you hear the wind and the birds. And so when I was up there, I felt very inspired, and so that had to be one of my pictures in that book, for sure.
Yes.
And I took a little license to put the St. Paul skyline up there. But if you drive up that
yes.
road long enough, that's
It's
exactly
not too
what
far
you see.
away.
Yes.
And this
So-
is like a neat view of the bridge and
Yes.
the river.
Yes. And I was fascinated by the bridge with the cars.
Yeah, I know when
going
I
across.
first came to town, I couldn't get over the beauty of that place.
Yes.
And people said to me, oh, follow that road and go up there. It's a beautiful view.
Yes.
And many times through the years, we've gone up there.
And it's very private for some reason, but I think it
Yes.
adds to its spirituality, I think.
Oh, very much so. And of course, the Native Americans, you think about them
Yes.
being there.
Yes.
Because
Yes.
their burial mounds are there.
And it's so very American, This is something you can't find anywhere else in the
Yes.
world.
And actually, if you aren't familiar with Hudson, there's a teepee right at the beginning
Yes.
of the road.
Yes.
I always drove by that and thought, why is that there? When I first came here. And then it made perfect sense.
Yes.
Because it is Berkmoos Park.
Yes.
And it's really part of the culture of this area.
It is. And
It
it's
is.
beautifully kept up. So if you ever want to have a place to meditate
Oh,
or
yes.
just enjoy, you can
Very,
sit
very
up there.
nice.
Actually, there aren't that many people up there all the time.
No, that's true.
But they do come and go, so
Yeah, it is a beautiful area. So, how nice that you would reproduce that and put it in your book. And I really enjoy that area myself. Well, now you've added another job since I talked to you,
yes.
and you are now an editor. And I've got one of the things here you've written for is the Minnesota Scholar. So tell me about that. How did you get into that? And
Well, I have been a member of the Minnesota Independent Scholars Forum for about 5 or 6 years. And I belong to one of their book groups, and we meet regularly. And then, too, I had been asked to do a number of programs for them. I did some readings and of my books, and I also did some other program involving poetry and my reading. And so then, next thing you know, I'm on the board of the Minnesota Scholars.
yes.
And I also wound up on the board of the Minnesota Scholar, which is their journal.
Oh, yes.
And one thing led to another, and I was asked to be the new editor for the Minnesota Scholar.
Oh, my.
And at first I said, well, you know, I have so many projects going, I don't think I can do it justice. I'm going to have to decline. But then somebody talked to me, a friend of mine said, Evelyn, you just can't turn this down. And I said, well, maybe if I rearrange some of my obligations and I can take over in 2016. So I did that. I did rearrange some of my other commitments to make time, because it will be time consuming.
Oh, yes.
But I think it's something I've always wanted to do. I think I would enjoy doing it. And so I am just now getting my feet wet and starting to take over. And I had written a couple of articles last year for the journal, and so I'm really looking forward to doing it. The first one that will come out this year will probably be around June.
Okay.
And maybe the next one won't come out till next January, because I'm going to have to fit it into my schedule, so I may have to shift a little. Maybe we'll have it out January and June or July instead of June and November or December, because
right, you're flexible then.
Right. The fall is the time around Christmas. Between November and December, I'm very, very busy.
Oh, yes, I can understand
so
that.
then, in order to do it justice, it may have to be shifted. I don't know. We'll see. For now, the first deadline for submissions is May 16th, and we'll see what we get. And we'll probably have topics. I think people feel more encouraged to write when they get a topic. I remember that from my loft teaching days.
Yes.
Everything helps a little bit.
Oh,
you know.
certainly.
And so.
And this particular one I'm looking at came out last July, and I see you have 2 articles.
Well, I did, we usually do a program description, so one of them is a program write-up.
Okay.
And the other one is the article. It was the lead article.
Yes, and it's called The Company of Plants.
Yes.
Did you choose the theme?
Yes, I did. Because, you know, I'm not a big-time gardener, but I do have some house plants. I have mostly a lot of African violets. I have about 60 of those.
Oh, my.
And I have some other variegated vines in my house. And I observed some peculiar goings-on with my vine over some periods of time. And then I read some article in the National Wildlife magazine about research that's being done on the life of plants. And that, you know, do plants react to people? Do plants experience pain? And I think the area of plants is scientifically a brand new area that hasn't really been fully explored until now. But there is research to show that plants do react to people and their surroundings. They react to each other. They have survival, I don't know if you want to call them skills, but they have survival mechanisms.
Oh, yes.
And so there was a lot of support for the things I began to assume about my plant sitting on my coffee table and showing changes that couldn't be explained. You know, why is the plant moving in ways that are not toward the light, for instance?
Oh, yeah.
And so then I looked for reasons why this plant is behaving that way. And so it was just fun. You know, some people...
Yes, what fun. I was delighted to see this because
gardeners
I'm in the
love it.
garden club and I'm trying to learn as much as I can
Yes.
about planting and how to do it and shade and sun and everything.
Right, and
They're
that's
affected
only
by so many different things.
yes, as I'm discovering, and when I shared this with my friends from the Horticultural Society, and
Yeah.
I expected them to shrug me off, and they
Oh.
didn't. They thought
Really?
this was really
Interesting.
something. Sure.
Yeah. And then you've even got a drawing on this particular issue. So you
Right.
drew one of your own violets, I bet.
Well, I had a picture of a violet, and I just, put it on the computer, and we whittled it down to a tiny size.
Well, this would be a really interesting read here. And I think, do you have to join a certain club to get this production?
You can subscribe to it, or you can join. The fee for the membership fee is only $25 a year, and then you get 2 issues of the journal. And they always love new members. You don't have to have any particular
Interesting.
discipline or just an interest in scholarship. And they have wonderful programs. And you can also just visit if you like. They meet in Minneapolis at the Washburn Library.
Oh, yeah. So
Usually the 4th Saturday of the month at
so
9:30.
it's based in Minneapolis.
It's based in Minneapolis, yeah.
Oh, that is wonderful. I think you'll do such a good job with that.
Well,
But of course, it will be
so I'm looking forward to doing
some
it.
work.
Yes, it will be.
And if you're busy writing and drawing and whatever else you're doing, you have to make time.
Yes. Well, you kind of alternate, and I do always have ideas about certain things, and it's really another good outlet for me. I have the kind of mind that's just not at rest very easily.
Oh, yes.
And so I might as well put it to work creatively, and then it gives me some sense of, shall we say, relief. This is done now.
Sure.
I can go on to the next thing.
Yes. Well, I'm glad you took it on, and I just hope it goes really well for you.
Thank
And
you.
I know it'll be challenging, but sometimes I think, too, we need new things like that to challenge us.
And I will have some people on the board that if I get things that are very technical, that I can consult with them, when I edit an article to make sure that things fall in place the way they should. And so I'm looking forward to working with these people as well.
Well, I'm really glad you made me aware of this because I think that's very interesting. And there's another one here, too. And
Right.
You brought the ones from 2015, so that's very interesting.
Yeah, that one is politically correct, the
Oh,
article
yes.
that I have in there. And we decided we wanted to do something with the election and all the
Oh,
political
boy.
things going on.
Yes.
And when Donald Trump first came on the scene, and there were other people who were not very politically correct.
Oh, yes.
And so we had some discussions about what happens when public figures get out there and certain groups feel hurt because of certain statements that are blanket statements.
Yes, that was happening.
And
wasn't
so 2 of us thought we'll take on the subject, and one of the other people on the board wrote about, Gus Fenton wrote the lead article about another politician in the past, and then I did the politically correct. And so I gave them, the readers, a little background of how politically correct came about historically and to the present, and why it has such an impact when we disregard it.
Well, this is very timely. Election year is here. We've had a lot of debates.
Yes.
A lot has been said, good, bad, and whatever.
Yes.
And that's nice to have a sort of a, I don't know,
Kind of a
to
public
give your
discussion.
ideas on it, what's going on in that. So I think that would be interesting to read even for me. So very good. So Now, we did say what you're going to be doing in the next couple months. Could you just review that with me? In February, you have?
Yeah, in February, we have the art showing at the Woodbury Arch Stafford Library in Woodbury. And the artwork can be viewed as long as the library is open.
Mm-hmm.
And then also in February, I'll be speaking at the Twin Cities Grief Coalition at House of Hope Church on Summit Avenue. They meet at 5:30 on February 18th. And I will be speaking about art or creativity and grieving, because I want to go into more than just art. There are many ways to be creative, and art is merely one.
That would be very valuable for many people.
I hope so, and
I
I'm
think
going
so.
to share some of my own experiences and have, then people, and give people an opportunity to bring in their own experience and express their own journey in that respect. So I'll have a sheet for them that they can take with them in terms of options that
Oh, what a
people have open.
great idea, and so beneficial.
And then in March, I'll be in St. Cloud at the Granite City Book Club.
Oh, yes.
And that will be at 6 in the evening. And I don't offhand know the address, but
But what will you be speaking about on that one? Do you have any idea yet?
well, they were kind of leaving it open. They wanted to read my books. They are aware of my books, and
yes.
so I will probably, it might become a forum, and those can be really fun, where you let the audience kind of determine what they want to hear and what they want to discuss. So I'll be discussing Seasons of Desire and Once Upon a Neighborhood, probably. I don't know if they'll have From Here Across the Bridge there, but I'm quite flexible, and I can talk about how the art influenced the book, or I can talk about the ideas, how I get ideas, and of course I can talk about the process of writing, or even the process of artwork, So it all depends on what it is they want. So they didn't really want me to pin anything down. They wanted to have an open discussion.
Oh, wow.
So,
Very
and I look
good.
forward to those, because those can be a lot of fun. I've done a number of those, and done one at the Woodbury Library. It was a year ago or 2 years ago with a book club, and it was just wonderful. A lot of people came, and not just the book club, and that's a nice thing when you have it at a library, and I agreed with the librarian, we'll leave it open for the general public, and a lot of people came.
And do you have a website?
Yes, I have a website. It's www.evelynkleinauthor.com. So it's easy to remember.
We'll put that on the screen.
Yes.
So people can spell it correctly and everything and find it.
And I'm going to be updating it coming up next. It's just a lot of things to get done, and so.
Yes, of
but I
course.
have someone who will do the website for me, so I will probably get all new things on there, and maybe even redo the website, so I have more inclusive information for people.
Very good. Well, we're not putting pressure on you. Evelyn,
No,
you have
I'm
enough
doing
to
that
do.
myself.
I know you are. Well, thank you so much for coming today.
Well, thank you, Bobby. It's always a pleasure
How
to talk with you.
interesting to talk to you and find out all these developments, and I'm just really admiring you for all you're doing.
Well, thank you. It is a wonderful way to use my time and to get out there
It is.
and show people what can be done.
Yes. Oh, definitely. So thanks again, and keep us in touch.
Well, thank you for having me.
You're welcome, and I hope you've enjoyed watching the show today and got inspired to do some reading and perhaps attend some of these events we talked about. And again, we'll see what comes up in the future, but I do like to feature authors. It's really a lot of fun for me. So thanks again for watching today.